So one of the things that I do is writing the capacity declaration. So what is a capacity declaration? It's basically a document which states how much capacity or how many slots can be allocated by the slot coordinator. So it can be seen as the assignment, or at least the limits within the slot coordinator has to stay when ACNO is coordinating the slots. In general, a capacity declaration, it can include all forms of capacity, going from, let's say, check-in, security capacity, all the way to runway capacity. But it's up to each and every airport to decide what is limiting for them and what should be included in their capacity declaration. In our specific case, we have the Dutch ATC to provide us input regarding the runway capacity, so that's one of the parts of the capacity declaration. And we have to consult the coordination committee on this document before we publish it. So we publish it twice a year, before every season. So if an airline wants to provide input to this process, then usually it's in the coordination committee meetings that we receive this input. So what is in our document? What is in our capacity declaration? There are actually 5 types of capacities that we currently declare. The first one listed here, it's actually the most important one. It's the annual limit that we have. So we have a legal limitation regarding the number of movements that we are allowed to facilitate every operational year. And we have divided those into the 2 seasons. We also have a legal limitation regarding the number of night movements. We convert the number of movements into the number of night slots that can be allocated, and that's the second thing that we declare in our capacity declaration. It's not so much of interest for full freight carriers, but there is also a limitation on wide-body passenger arrivals in the morning, which is to protect a shortage of stands for these types of aircraft. And LVNL specifies for us the runway capacity. The runway capacity is defined in 20-minute intervals and 60-minute intervals. These 20-minute intervals are fixed intervals in a way, so you can see, for example, between 10 and 10:19 we have X number of arrival movements available and an X number of departure slots available. And we also have a 60-minute capacity, which is slightly less than 3 times 20. And that's defined also in a 20-minute interval, so 10 to 11, 10:20 till 11:20, etc. So this is basically what it looks like, this runway capacity. The top line is the arrival capacity, the bottom line is the departure capacity. And you can clearly see the wave system that we have at Schiphol defined here. So we have an outbound wave, an inbound wave, and then they alternate throughout the day to facilitate the hub function that we have. So this is one of the limitations that we have to stay within when slots are being allocated. This is a typical day. So you see the limits as well as the number of allocated slots. So you can see that the morning is typically very full, and then there might be some space, say in the afternoon. It's a very basic figure, but it gives in my opinion, it gives a good idea on when you request a slot, what is being considered before the slot is allocated. So we have runway capacity, and runway capacity is valid for all traffic except for traffic that is not obliged to have a slot. So general aviation, business aviation, full freight, passenger, every movement needs a runway slot, so to say. Then we have the annual capacity limit for the 24-hour period, so the day period. It's valid for commercial aviation. So business aviation and general aviation, they are excluded from the 500,000. Full freight is considered a commercial operation. So you have to be within this hoop as well as within the green hoop. Then there is night capacity, the 32,000, and it's again inside this one. So to operate in the night, you need runway capacity, you need annual day capacity, but you also need night capacity as tick in the box. So you need to pass through 3 hoops. And then there is the passenger widebody limitation, which is not inside of this hoop because it's only the morning, right? So it's either this hoop or this hoop. During daytime, it's the green area, so it's runway and 500,000. If it's full freight capacity in the night, then it's runway 500,000 and 32,000.
Is it 22:30 or 10:30 a.m.?
It's so the widebody arrival passenger limitation is between 7:20 and 10:30 local time in the morning, and it's only for arrivals.
Still no capacity behind it.
Yeah, it's the stand capacity, so it's parking space, so the same. It's either really slow or it's not responding. But
It's quite slow.
Are there any questions at this moment?
Thank you, indeed, an informative session. One question, the wave pattern that you showed, a typical day, does it vary on different weekdays or it's almost same every day?
no, the declared capacity is the same on every day throughout the season. So it doesn't vary between days, it's just the same capacity day after day after day. And currently it also doesn't change between winter and summer season, so it's the same capacity throughout the year.
And is there any intention to increase the capacity?
Do you mean runway or we have been doing research towards this, and currently there is no opportunity for us to increase the capacity for the runway. Yeah.
Well, what is the capacity of the runways?
It's stated, so it varies throughout the day. Arrival is lower than departure because the throughput on a departure runway is higher than an arrival runway, so it's 25 and 23 per 20 minutes.
Yeah, but we have the 500,000 slots. What would be the maximum if you look only at the runways?
Outside of the night or with the night? I think it's just as a general idea, with the night it would be 700 plus thousand, and just the day period it would be 600,000 something. Yeah.
And is there any intention to increase the 500,000 in any way?
We are dependent on Dutch legislation on that, so it's a legal limit that we have.
There's no current dialogue going on to increase that number.
We are of course always discussing it, but cannot give you let's say an outlook or an expectation on that.
At the moment, that's a really high level political discussion in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Quite a difficult discussion.
Yeah, very contentious.
Out of this graph, how many of those are historic? So where there is room for ad hoc business?
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to answer it. My colleagues of ACNL will.
You mean the historics of cargo or all historics? Let's skip that.
And do you divide the capacity between freighters and passengers, or it's all?
No, because we have these. We go through to the hoop. Okay, you press to the next and the next one. Yeah, because the blue, green, and the red hoop, so to say. They are valid for all types of traffic. That's why we don't split them.
Extending on that question, is there an intention to separate slots for cargo and passenger flights? So to have another loop?
We have and are researching that, but it's also a legal question whether that's possible.
What legal limitations would exist to split cargo and passenger?
It has to do with the way we declare capacity. So basically, what you're saying is there is dedicated freight capacity, dedicated passenger capacity,
Yeah.
but our legal limit is only total passenger volume. So there is no legal limit that defines the two separately.
Yeah, must be some financial considerations behind it as well. What's the revenue of one passenger in comparison to the landing fee of one full freighter?
There could be, but that's not something that we are actively taking into account in that discussion.
What does it need to make you actively consider this in your discussions?
The financial part, do you mean?
No. How can the industry, the cargo industry, motivate Schiphol to also consider this element? Yeah, because I think there is a vast interest in establishing full freighter slots,
Yeah.
for example. And what does it need for us as industry to convince you, Schiphol, to consider a split between full freighter slots?
The most obvious one is the legal aspect of it.
Okay.
So that's the first one we would have if we are looking at.
Yeah. And then the legal aspect, you say it's national law or is it EU law?
EU law
EU
and
law.
EU and national law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. For now,
Yeah.
I'm fine. Yeah.
What I'm missing here a little bit is, if you look at capacity, it is the handling capacity. So the passenger handling capacity and
Yeah.
cargo handling capacity, and I think it's quite actual if you saw what happened
Yeah.
during the May holidays.
Yeah, it's a very valid question. So I started by stating that any type of capacity can be included in the capacity declaration, and it's up to each and every airport to decide which of the forms of capacity they would like to limit in their capacity declaration. Our view is that we only declare what we think is limiting actually in the operations. So we write our capacity declaration approximately 6 months in advance. So 6 months ago, our view was still that these would be the most limiting factors.
And for the next capacity declaration, at this moment, the security is the limiting part?
Yeah, so we're currently working on the winter capacity declaration.
Yeah.
And for the winter capacity declaration, it will be the same. And then in September, we will have to declare the summer capacity for summer 23.
I think that would be good if that is taken into account.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you see that you give a maximum capacity which you have available. That's what you show. But do you also have like some historical results? So like, of course, first of all, 19 pre-COVID, what did we do in 20, just for a reference, what did we do in 21? What is the given slots currently, for instance, summer 22? And are we already at a maximum, or is there still a huge amount of space left?
Do you mean currently?
Current.
So for the current, so this summer season, I'm again not sure if I can answer it, but I think we are aligned on this. So within this 500,000 limit, there is room available.
Because,
Currently.
for instance, in 21, total amount of given slots, based on those 500, which was the maximum, I think we did not even exceed 300.
No, so it has to do with the process of historical rights versus actual operations.
That I understand, but you give a capacity limit, that's what you show.
Yeah.
But what is currently still the space within this capacity?
Yeah, so for this summer season, there have been, let's say, slot handbacks, so airlines not willing to operate their slots, and for that reason, there is sufficient space available within the 500,000 limitation.
Which means that basically when a airline, cargo airline, is requesting a current slot, it should be almost an automatic approval in regards to the assignment of the slot.
Unless it's a night topic.
Makes sense?
Yeah, so at the moment we have sufficient slots available. It doesn't mean that we have historical slots available because airlines have the possibility to cancel a certain amount of slots within its portfolio to maintain the historic right. So there is capacity available, except not for night slots as in combination.
Makes sense.
Not
So-
for slots, just for night slots.
Not for night slots, no. So when looking at these hoops, runway capacity might be limiting at some points of the day. So it's the time that you request as an airline that might be of influence there. This hoop is available, this one is not, and this one might be at some days.
Is the capacity suppose that in the summer, let's say 200,000 slots are used, does that mean there's 300,000 available for the winter? And then if that is not used, so does it roll over to later seasons?
So we define the capacity 6 months before. So there is, let's say, a standard distribution of winter and summer. So it's let's say a standard number, 180 something thousand and 310 something thousand. And there have been years where we transferred from winter to summer the capacity, because our legal limitation, the 500,000, it runs from the 1st of November until the 1st of November. But IATA seasons, they start at the last Sunday of October, and the winter ends at the last Sunday of March. So there's, let's say, a shift between those. And because it starts in November, we can only transfer from winter to summer, because after the summer, the 500,000 limit, or the period for which this limit is valid, it ends. So we cannot transfer from summer to winter. And then every year there is a trade-off whether we want and need to transfer this capacity from winter to summer.
And what are the decision factors to do that? Yes or no?
It's the operational factors. So, for example, are there other types of capacity that might be, let's say, reached or breached when we transfer the capacity? And it also has to do with the political discussion that is always ongoing.
Can I ask a question about the annual night capacity and how that is allocated? And is there a separate pool for late running flights, for pre-allocated planned flights in the period, or how does that work?
There is no, let's say, pool or reservation for on-time performance or slot performance issues in that way. So it's just that there is a capacity, and it's up to the slot coordinator to allocate.
So if flights late running into the night period, they get blocked from arriving if there's no slots available?
Operational, you won't get blocked, but it is a form of slot misuse. So it's let's say, enforcement could be applied to that.
Are there any other questions, Kevin? Otherwise, I'd like to go.
With the white body for the passenger limitation that is in place in the morning period, you would suggest there would be openings for freight operations in that time, or is it also limited by the runway capacity at that block? Because I see in the morning it's busy, but there is an additional block on passenger white body aircraft. So that's already taken into account.
Yeah. So passenger widebody arrivals have to jump through the 3 hoops, so to say. So it's runway capacity for them. It's the passenger widebody arrival capacity, and it's 500,000 capacity.
Yeah.
So it means that if there are other types of traffic, such as narrow body or full freight, these are not part of the yellow hoop, but they do fill the other hoops as well.
So within that period, they are not limited. The other.
Not for this one, but they are for runway and 500,000. Yeah.
Going back to the night period again, if you do exceed the 32,000 by late running arrivals from a messy summer season on the passenger side, is there is there enforcement action taken against the airport, or?
Luckily, we have not been in such a situation. We also haven't been, let's say, so close to it that this was...
You've never exceeded it?
No.
Today, okay. And if you were, what would you expect to happen?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. At least what I'm sure of is that there will be a big political debate at the very least, and other than that, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
The fact that it didn't happen, does that say that you are planning very safe?
Yes.
It depends on what you define as very safe. I mean, there have been years, 2019, where we were actually actively monitoring throughout the year, because initially the expectation was that it was really close. So every month we are monitoring this, because it is not as fixed as 500,000, because there is operational variations that could cause for this specific limit to be overrun. We are constantly monitoring it.